it's difficult, I think, for us, or at least a lot of folks in churches, to identify with the Old Testament.
Mm-hmm.
So first question, I think, is a bit of a softball. Should we unhitch from the Old Testament?
No, we should not. I argue in the book that if we want to understand our identity as Christ followers and
Yeah.
our vocation in the world, we have to go back to the Old Testament, because that's where it's rooted, at Sinai. And that was the sort of hook or the reason for writing the book. But I found that so many people have rediscovered the Old Testament by reading it and being able to see the grace of God. We so often dichotomize God's character as though he's full of wrath in the Old Testament and full of grace in the New Testament. And it's just not true.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much grace in the Old Testament, and there's wrath in the New Testament. God is all of who he is in both testaments.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things about the book that I found helpful was, I think you invite readers to think about the Old Testament maybe in categories different from what we assume. So law, for example, right? We have all these laws in Torah, but if we read those like they're sort of the Alabama Code or the United States Code, or like that's anachronistic, that's a genre mistake.
It is.
How would you encourage us not thinking about it like United States Code or legal code? How should we think about these laws?
Yes. I mean, there's a lot of talk right now about the U.S. Constitution and the law code, with the Senate confirmation hearings going on, and what is a judge's job when it comes to interpreting the law. And we do just kind of take a lot of baggage with us when we read the laws in Scripture, taking our understanding of what law is and how it works. But in the Old Testament, the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Bible, that's one word that we use for them. Torah is often translated as law, but it's really quite broader than that. It really means instruction. And the instruction includes laws, but they're not exclusively laws. There's stories and songs and many things in the Torah. I think one major difference between ancient law and law today is that today law functions legislatively. We enforce it in court. Violation of the law incurs certain penalties, and those penalties are strictly regulated by our legal system. And in contrast to that, ancient law, not just in the Bible, but in surrounding nations or in the nations around Israel, law functioned as wisdom, as a way of expressing the will of God for his people and showing what a well-ordered society would look like. It was not meant to be the final word on things, but it was meant to be generative. So when Jesus comes along to interpret the law in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5, he says he did not come to abolish it or set it aside, but he came to fulfill it. And then he goes on to give examples of how that works. And it's striking, he says he'll point to a way that people in his own day are understanding it. And by the New Testament period, they had begun to read the law legislatively, because under Greek rule, that's where things had gone. They'd become more legislative. And so they were thinking, well, I haven't stolen anything. I haven't committed adultery. I haven't murdered anyone. I'm basically a good person. And Jesus says, no, it actually has to do with your heart. That, not murdering was not supposed to be the final word on how to be righteous. It was supposed to be an outer boundary. And what we really need to look at is the state of our heart, which is something that can't be legislated. And so if you even hate your brother, you've got a sin problem that needs to be dealt with. And so it looks to us like he's raising the bar, but I actually think he's taking us back to how the law originally intended to function, which was to help us think about how to live well in God's world.
Yeah, wisdom, I think you mentioned that in the book. That was a striking part for me, just thinking in terms of how I help people think through these issues. That this is more about formation and wisdom than it is do this and don't do that kind of thing. I mean, there's those elements are there.
Yep.
But
it's not like these are pick and choose which ones you want to follow, or if they're that they're optional. One thing that I didn't emphasize in the book that if I was rewriting it, I would, it's something I've been thinking through over the past couple weeks as I wrote a conference paper, is that the laws do not present us with an ideal society. The laws are meant to mitigate against the effects of living in life in a fallen world.
Right.
So we have laws, for example, regulating slavery. Some translations call it slavery, some servitude of some kind. That does not mean slavery is God's ideal. What it means is, in a situation where slavery is a given, here are the parameters within which you need to live as my people. So we shouldn't look back to the law to come up with like the ideal society. We should recognize that the law is trying to rein in our greedy tendencies, and so that we actually can make space for our neighbors to flourish.
Right. And it seems like I find myself if I'm preaching in Leviticus or
Mm-hmm.
Exodus, a lot of times, especially the holiness code, right, is you get instructions in Leviticus 19 that they're really about protecting people who are at your disadvantage.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of, right. So
absolutely,
don't hold back payroll,
yes,
on payday
yep.
kind of things, and
don't reap to the edges of your fields.
Yeah.
Leave the gleanings for those who need them.
Yeah. Don't trip blind people, right? So there's a
right.
character formation thing happening.
Right.
And the gleaning one particularly, if I recall, I don't have the text in front of me, but is that where God reminds them of his, I think the implication is, I've been generous to you.
Yes.
Now you embody that aspect
generous.
of my
yep.
character. Yeah.
Yep.
That's
and
really
they're specifically leaving it for widows and fatherless to come, people who would not have had land of their own to provide for them. They get to glean in the fields and vineyards of their neighbors.
So this, you'll know this much better than me. Is there evidence in other ancient Near Eastern societies that they lack that kind of protection of the vulnerable? Is that kind of a unique thing for?
I don't want to make a blanket statement to say that there was no protection of the vulnerable, because there are examples. I think it's in the Code of Hammurabi, but I might be wrong. One of the ancient law codes actually limits terms of slavery to 3 years, which is even shorter than the Bible's limit of 6 years. So it's not that the humanitarian impulse is absent from other law codes, but I would say in the Bible, we see lots of evidence that God is concerned about the most vulnerable members of society, and he's pushing them to be more generous than they were.
Yeah, so it's prominent, at least.
It is prominent.
Very much. Good.